Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about something a little different. There was a design that I posted on Mopar Insiders the other day, or yesterday I should say, and it's been catching a lot of attention, but I wanted to talk about why it kind of means something to me. Now, I'm not the one who designed it, but I want to talk about it real quick. So, growing up, I had very young parents, and we didn't have a lot of money, and my mom, at the time when I was born, she had a 1979 Plymouth Horizon TC3. And it was kind of a sporty car for the 80s, but it was a very cheap, subcompact little sports car. And at the time, like growing up, it kind of made me become like a big Mopar person because my dad had Mopars in the past, but my mom always drove Chrysler products. And this was the first Chrysler product that I actually knew when I was like 2-3 years old. And I looked online to see if I could find something that looked like hers. And this is the closest thing I could find. So this is like this is the only picture I could find that actually looks like hers. This is a 1979 Plymouth Horizon TC3, and it's in Cheetah Red. It's like this burgundy kind of color. But this one has the louvers on the back, and so did hers. So this was the only picture I looked all over online. This one was posted on back in 2018. But this is the only picture I could find of something that looks almost identical to the one she had. So it was a kind of a cool car. My dad ended up like in 1986 or something, 87. He ended up finding an interior for a Shelby Charger and put it in it and stuff like that. So it was very modded to my dad's taste and all that. But nonetheless, it got us through basically the 80s. And I think in, 1989 or 90, my mom ended up getting a K car. So she had that until like 1995. But anyways, this was what I grew up with. So this car has a special spot in my heart because of its, relation to me growing up. So a lot of people don't know about the L-body cars. And the L-body cars were kind of thrown into the mix back in 1978. And the reason why was at the time Chrysler was going bankrupt. We had the fuel crisis. All they did was produce big cars that got crappy fuel economy, and Lee Iacocca comes on board, and he's got all these issues he's got to solve. So at the time, they were looking at selling the Chrysler Europe. They actually had their own division in Europe, and they were making small cars. They were actually developing a world car over there called the Chrysler Horizon. And it was getting ready to launch, and Lee Iacocca goes, I want that here in North America. So while they sold the Chrysler Europe, they took their design and brought it here, and it was built at the Belvidere, Illinois plant. What is different than the European versions is the fact that we didn't get diesel engines. We got small displacement gas engines here. But it didn't keep the car from being kind of sporty. So what Iacocca did was he had the four-door like they did in Europe, but he also introduced a two-door model. And that's this car, again, the Horizon TC3. And Dodge had their own version of it too, called the Dodge Omni O24. That's this one. Now, this is a sport model. This is an actual 1979 sport model. And part of the reason why Iacocca wanted this car here immediately was the fact that, again, at the time, they didn't have any good fuel economy cars. And he was getting ready to go in front of Congress and say, hey, we need money to save the company. We need a guaranteed loan to actually save us from going bankrupt. And we're doing stuff that's progressive into bringing stuff here. Because at the time, they didn't have the K cars ready. They weren't even a thing. They were, he had the designs from Ford and the idea for the K cars, but he didn't have the money to actually put them in motion. This car was already being produced in Europe, and they brought it here. So what it got for powertrains was kind of a weird setup. It started out with a 1.7 liter, or I think it's a 1.7 or 1.8 liter Volkswagen 4-cylinder. Now, my mom's actually had this engine. It was based out of the Rabbit and produced a whopping, I think, like 71 or 72 horsepower. It wasn't that powerful at all. And then later, a 2.2 liter version from Chrysler came, and that made a whopping 84 horsepower. But they still kept the Volkswagen engine around until it was discontinued from Volkswagen, I think in like 1983 or something like that. And then eventually they all got 2.2 liters. But at the time, it wasn't about power. It was about getting the best fuel economy as possible and making a cheap, affordable car. Something that Dodge doesn't have today. So if you look at this Omni, this is an Omni Sport. You can kind of tell it's a little sportier because it's got two-tone paint. You look at the interior, it's got a red interior. It's got these rally wheels that are, just basic with white walls back in the day. And if we go into the interior here, this is that sport model. It's very red inside. And if you see that shifter right there, it was basically a parts car. They had robbed kind of things out of all the different like Dodge and Plymouth lineups trying to, save money to bring this car. Because again, the company was on the borderline of bankruptcy. So like the shifter out of it, that's right out of the same car that we have out in the garage here, the 1979 Chrysler 300. It was used in the Cordoba and a bunch of other cars that had center consoles. If you look at the door handles, that's the same. They used the door handles, or not the door handles, but the roller, the actual rolling mechanisms for the rolling, the actual manual windows. A lot of the stuff was parts, bin kind of material, but it worked. Dodge didn't go on to sell a ton of them, but it did pretty good enough to kind of show Congress that, hey, they're looking at doing something. Here's a back picture of that sport model. It's got an actual hatchback design. And this is from the 1979 brochure. So this is actually showing you, the actual marketing scheme. So you can see it says, sport with a two-tone paint package. There's optional premium all vinyl bucket seats. And then here you can see on the bottom here, this is the Dodge Omni O24. And this is a more performance-oriented package, which it wasn't. It had the same engines and stuff, but it was more sporty looking. So you got color-keyed, exterior wheels. You got a kind of a built-in spoiler to the back of the hatch, and just some really sporty options, to make it look really sporty. It got to the point where the car was so cheap and reasonable that other companies were looking at the Omni and using them as test beds. So back in 1980, Jet Industries, a company in Austin, Texas, actually took a fleet of Dodge Omni O24s and Plymouth Horizon TC3s and made them into EVs. And I recently did an article about one that was for sale on Facebook Marketplace. So this is the Dodge Omni Electra 007. So what it is it was made to help out, basically during the energy crisis, kind of help out the U.S. Energy Department. And they sold several of these. I think I can't remember if it was a couple hundred or a couple thousand. There wasn't many of them. And their performance was very, very bad. So it had a DC, basically, motor over the front axle. And it produced a whopping 23 horsepower. You can see how big this EV motor is, this actual motor and inverter and stuff is underneath the hood of this car compared to today's technology. And then it used normal car batteries in the back, and look how many there are. There's 12 of them in this thing. And ultimately, depending on the condition that you were running it in, it would get anywhere from 25 to 60 miles of range with a top speed of 65 to 70 miles an hour. So it wasn't even close to anything that we had here today, but it was something that kind of moved forward. But the Omni was really the first Dodge EV that was ever really built to the mass markets. And even though it wasn't Chrysler, it was Jet Industries that did it, this was still a huge stepping stone forward. Fast forward through its lifetime, in the mid-'80s, in 1983, Dodge introduced, they introduced a new package for the Dodge Omni O24, and that was the Charger package. Eventually, by 1985, Dodge kind of did away with the O2 and the Omni name, or O24 and the Omni name, and they basically made it just Charger. So they gave it a little bit of a fresh look. Depending on which model you got, you could either get a quad headlamp model or kind of similar to what the first iteration of the car looked like. And at that time, Dodge was getting really big into turbocharged four-cylinder engines. Colonel Shelby comes on board, and he actually produced quite a few of these Shelby Chargers, and they were huge successes, and they're huge collector's items to this day because of the performance for what they were in the 80s. So basically the Omni became the Charger, and then we've seen the Horizon also get morphed. The Horizon TC3 got morphed into this. This is the Plymouth Turismo. And you can see this one has the quad headlamps. But like the Dodge Charger, the Shelby Charger and that, Plymouth wanted to bring back its own muscle car kind of heritage. So this is the Turismo Duster. And this was an actual package, kind of like the Charger, but not as performance-oriented. And it was pretty popular during 85, 86, 87. Then these cars actually ended up going basically on for their life until the late Well, it was 1990 when they were discontinued. The 1990 model year was the very last year that they were in production. So you got to think they were an 11-year production run, and they were built at Belvedere. And there was actually, you can find still quite a few of them around. But it's kind of one of those cars that's been kind of forgotten. People know it because of the Shelby Charger and that, but not many people know about its heritage and its lineup, considering it actually sprawled across both the Dodge and Plymouth brands. So that's where we're going to talk about what I wrote about yesterday. This right here. This has been getting a lot of attention. I've been getting a lot of text and emails about this thing, and a lot of people are like, is this real? It's not real. I was on a Facebook, kind of like a page or a group that does AI automotive art. And there was this gentleman named John Ostendorf, and he posts quite a few designs and stuff, and he posted this one. And it's his take on a modern day Omni O24. And it really got me thinking, not just because of, my connection with the TC3 and O24, but one thing I've been complaining about, and I've been kind of an advocate about, is Dodge and Jeep and Chrysler and even Ram need cheaper vehicles. If you look at Stellantis' lineup right now in the US, the cheapest vehicle that you can buy, the only one that's under $30,000 is one trim on the Jeep Compass. A 2025 Jeep Compass Sport 4x4, which basically gives you 4 color options. You can get weathered mats, like all weather mats, and a sticker package. And that's it. That's all the options you can get. It has standard 4-wheel drive, a 2-liter turbo engine, but that's it. Is $25,995, not including destination charges. So realistically, it's about $28,000. Now, Jeep will tell you, hey, we actually offer a Latitude model that is under $30,000. But to me, if it's under $30,000, it does not include, or it does include destination. So if you take and add destination to that Latitude model, you're over I think it's $31,000. So it's not under 30 to me. But Dodge recently said, hey, we're going to basically cut the Hornet back to where it started, because Hornet sales have been dismal. And they moved the one package, the GT package, the standard GT, not the GT Plus, the GT, to a starting price of $29,995 before destination. So technically, Dodge still doesn't have a sub $30,000 vehicle. It may look like that, but when you read the fine print, that doesn't include taxes and all this other stuff that's added on. Dodge doesn't have anything under $30,000. So when I seen John's actual design, I was pretty impressed. It really reminded me of the O24. And here's a 1981 version from an actual Chrysler or Dodge brochure from that model year. Yeah, it's got that raked back, look. Looked very basic, but this car was cheap. This was an entry-level car that was supposed to be made fun. And if you think back to even the early 2000s, when I was in high school, my very last year in high school, I remember Dodge rolled out they basically announced the Neon SRT4. And everybody went crazy. They had this really cool ad that I can't put on YouTube because it'll be black flagged because of copyright stuff. But they had this video where this young kid steals his brother's car, takes a girl out, sees his brother coming back home, and he races home, and he's street racing with a Subaru WRX. So it was crazy. And the thing was, that car was the fastest car under $20,000 at the time. Basically, it was $19,995. So technically, it wasn't $20,000, but it had 215 horsepower when it made its debut. A year later, it had 230. 0 to 60 under 6 seconds. 5-speed manual transmission, 2.4 liter turbo engine, 4-door compact car. And everybody's been asking, hey, they need a modern, compact performance car. Now, it doesn't need to be rear-wheel drive. We know that. It doesn't need to be all-wheel drive. If you make a really good, affordable front-wheel drive package with equal length axles, or drive shafts up front, so it doesn't torque steer like crazy, you could have a really good seller on this thing. like an actual really good seller in your portfolio. So when I seen John's picture, his original picture, I was like kind of awestruck because it kind of a lot reminded me of a modern take on the original one, which he was looking for. So if you look at the back hatch design, it gets rid of that weird C-pillar kind of action, but kind of rounds it off. And it still has that back quarter window. Has this really aggressive wide body stance to it. Different than the original one, because back then, the 80s, we didn't have wide body cars. The front end has a light bar that goes all the way across. Kind of looks like a Honda Civic. Everybody kind of says, yeah, looks like a Honda Civic. But it's just enough to have Dodge DNA in this thing to make it look different. It doesn't look like a copy of a Charger. It looks different, and it looks very cool. Kind of looks like a mix between a Civic and I would say like almost like a Volvo or a Polestar kind of vehicle. But his idea is something fun and sporty that's small. And I think John did a really good job executing this in AI. So, there's a lot of possibilities. If you were to bring a car out like this, you could do, let's say, even in my article I wrote, you could do a 1.3 liter GSE T4, which is the global small engine family, turbocharged 4-cylinder that we've seen in the Jeep Renegade here in the US. 1.3, my wife's got one in her Renegade. It's plenty fine. It's got plenty of balls. 180 horsepower, 177 horsepower, 210 foot-pounds of torque. You match that to a little like 6-speed manual transmission, this thing would fly. Front-wheel drive, perfect. If you did an electric vehicle, the range and the price would be kind of outrageous. We've seen, Stellantis is working on their Stella Small platform, which is an evolution of what they call their smart car platform, which underpins like the Fiat 500e. The Fiat 500e is $32,000. It's a city car. The range isn't impressive. Performance is not impressive. And again, $32,000. That's way out of the range of what this car should be. This should be like a low $23,000, performance car. I would say like $23,000, $24,000, $25,000 performance car at the most. But something cool like this would be very popular for young adults, even teenagers that are looking for their first car. Something sporty, something fun. Now, that's not the only picture John did. He actually did one of the back, too. And, of course, it's got even more Dodge DNA with the racetrack design. But you can see that it actually has a spoiler and a hatchback design just like the original O24. And it does add Charger elements, like very Charger-like elements. It's not close enough to be a Charger. They're more square. But it does look like a Dodge. That's the very important thing. So there's a lot of possibilities out there. But this design made me really think like, hey, Dodge really does need something like this. We've been hearing it from people for a while, and they need to make more affordable vehicles. And when I posted this yesterday, my email blew up with people going, is this thing real? I'm like, no, it's a rendering. Read the article. But the very funny thing is everybody goes, we want an affordable car. And Dodge has an opportunity to do it. Right now, they only have 3 vehicles in their lineup. They got the Charger, Durango, and Hornet. And we know the Hornet's selling like crap. And with the U.S. tariffs and stuff in place, where would they build it? Well, there's plenty of space. Because you look at what, the company is doing right now, everything's kind of changing. The Jeep Wrangler and the Jeep Grand Cherokee aren't going to be sold in Europe, it looks like, after starting this year. They're going to be replaced with the new Recon and Wagoneer S. So we're going to see less export models being built here in Detroit. Does the Mack plant really need to be around if they move all Grand Cherokee production to Jefferson? That opens up the possibility of being able to build something there. Belvedere could be an actual place that they could build something like this. There's been talk about moving products around. If they built something like this here, I doubt it would be realistically I would say low 20s, just because of the UAW and how much they make. But realistically, instead of building, Ram heavy duties down in Mexico. They brought them back here to the US, which was the intention back in 2018 with Sergio Marchionne, like I've said before. They could build something like this in Mexico, and not only would it fit for the Mexican market, but it would fit here in Canada as well. Something cheap, something that's affordable. And that's where a lot of people are complaining about Dodge. Dodge went from being this blue-collar performance brand to when COVID hit, and then all of a sudden it's on par with Alfa Romeo as a premium performance brand. And that's why they're losing sales. The pricing is killing everybody, and Dodge needs to get back to its normal formula of having affordable vehicles again. And when you have people that go out and design stuff like this using AI, it really shows that, hey, there's a lot of possibilities out there that Dodge could do. The thing is, they need to execute something like this soon, because they're getting rid of customers by not doing stuff like this. By producing more expensive vehicles, you're alienating your customer base that you had 10 years ago. Not even 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So we haven't had an affordable, compact Dodge since the Dart here at least here in the US. Down in Mexico, we've talked about that the Attitude is a super seller down there. For how many units the brand sells, a majority of them are the new Attitude cars that are Chinese built by GAC, and they seem to be really taking off. The GAC cars they're a little bit larger than what this car would be, but they start at $23,000 and top out at $28,000. And that's what they need here. They don't need a car full of tech. You don't need a car full of performance. You need cars that are fun to drive, that are cheap and affordable, and people can use them like appliances. Give us something that is not best in class in everything, but does everything well. That's what we need. So I threw this out there, and like I said, I was really overwhelmed with the response of how people like this thing. So you look at our social media accounts and stuff, there's a lot of positive feedback on it. So what do you guys think? Do you think that something like this, a small, compact, 2-door, maybe a 4-door, little compact, subcompact car, that's fun, front-wheel drive based, maybe with a manual transmission, automatic obviously would be there, but something like this design would be successful in the US, in Canada? Let me know in the comments below. And, we're going to continue looking at different AI stuff. We have had a lot of digital designers over the years on Mopar Insiders that we feature, which we still will. But AI has gotten so good at some of the stuff that it really opens up the doors for what could be something that's realistic, that some people have thoughts in their head but can't put them on paper. And that's what AI is helping out with. So stuff like this is kind of cool to look at. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.